anyone can be sensitive or intuitive, but what is the hardest part about being sensitive and intuitive in receiving information? It's discernment. Okay, guys, today we have one of our educational videos for you. We're going to talk about discernment, specifically discernment with the paranormal. So, one thing that Em and I have learned through our experiences and doing the type of work that we do, discernment doesn't always come just so freely and naturally. Some people are more blessed with discernment, right, off the bat, and some people actually have to work for it. I've learned that it is not just given, it's learned and it's earned. So today, Emily and I are going to talk about just literally how to discern different energies from an experience perspective.
Yes, because let me say, we have a lot of those. But Chastity, I just want to ask for you, how did you earn or get your discernment? Was it learned or was it something you just had?
I feel like overall, if you look outside of paranormal stuff, it really came naturally for me. Some people have just that, like they can discern and make quick decisions. I think it comes with being very claircognizant and just being in touch with your thoughts and your inner world. Because when you talk about discernment, you're talking about your feelings, your emotions, and your perspective. But you're also, going to run into the issue of your perspective getting in the way of the things that, or your ego, because it's kind of tied together too. Getting in the way of being able to discern. So it really does come from experience to be able to truly do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like on the dime. But it also just does come from the fact that you have to trust spirit.
Yeah.
So pretty much we have some things that we're going to talk about. Basically, what is discernment? Why is it important in the spiritual field, particularly in the paranormal field? A little bit about energy, frequency, vibration, perspective, and the role of that when discerning spirits. And maybe even a little bit about the clair senses and how that may come across to you, because we get a lot of emails, we get a lot of messages, and people are asking, what is it? What is it? What is it? And I have to tell them, well, how did it make you feel? Because your feelings are attached to your extrasensory perceptions.
Yeah. And I mean, going into this work, because I'm very clairsentient, I always went by how it made me feel before I could think. Because sometimes your brain gets in the way of your feelings and how the energy overall made you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Emily, do you want to go ahead and just kick us off with your definition of discernment?
Sure. So, my definition of discernment is the ability to judge past perceived outward appearances using energy frequency with our abilities to allow us to perceive like other things. So it's not just like what you see on the outside, and maybe not even what the thing you are analyzing, not even just like what they're trying to present to you, but like the overall take of all the information you gain from your senses.
Yeah. And that can be a very analytical process, right? Sometimes we want to really overanalyze that, but really, for me, it's about taking those experiences as a whole and
Mhm.
trusting what spirit gives me and what I see and what I've seen from my past experiences with people. Because Emily and I, again, if you're new, welcome. But if you already know a little bit about us, before reaction videos, before anything else, we are two mediums that specialize in the paranormal. So our client base is people that can technically be considered victim or victimized from paranormal experiences, but that can also sway depending on things that are going on in life, because we say we found a correlation between our traumas, and which, if we are still holding on to those, it can lower our frequency, energy, vibration, subjecting us to darker things. um, Hundreds of people from around the world have reached out and talked to us about these experiences. So I have, I don't even know how many recorded files of paranormal incidences that are private that I can't share publicly, of people saying very similar things, very similar situations. And I can use those situations and stuff to discern. But what about if you don't have all of that? That's where it really comes to just tapping into that gut feeling, that knowing. We all have the ability to access our clairs. We all have the ability to access that kind of information, but it's really, again, goes back to trusting what we're seeing, trusting what we're feeling, and understanding that not everybody's made equally on that. And there's a reason when we talk about vibration and different frequencies and stuff.
I just want to add into that, based off my clients, I have a similar like experience because I mean, you have your files, I have mine, I write mine by hand, but nonetheless, we both have our own files. And because we keep track of our clients and things, we are able to go back into the notes that we've taken and analyze and find patterns based off of how certain energies and entities like work and conduct themselves in terms of their oppression techniques.
Yes. And there's also a lot of people, that have done this type of work in the paranormal field, because it's not all about being psychic. People have done work, with when it comes to energy frequencies and stuff. They have high tech equipment that they've used and proven time and time again, because folks that don't tap into their extrasensory perceptions, they have ways, they still have feelings. It translates over from your five senses, right? We have our five senses here in the 3D, touch, taste, smell. And then we also have those clair senses that are kind of mimicked, and that is from physical experiences versus like emotional experiences, things that can't be observed. And that's really where discernment lies, and places that it comes from feelings and emotions and things that can't be, observed. And we don't have to just rely on our notes. We can rely on other people's experiences too, that we've learned over the years. I think that's an important point to add. That also means that you can too, the viewer, you know, um, really getting out there, I guess you could say, in the field, however that looks for you. If you're somebody that's interested in doing this, is the most important thing, because we realize there's different levels of discernment that's needed for different people. And I think it would be important too during this to talk a little bit about maybe some of experiences that we've had too.
Mm-hmm. And I also want to point out, like, the reason why we do this, obviously, because we have clients that need help and we're trying to help people that are diving into the spiritual and paranormal fields that are just starting out and they want to explore and learn and empower themselves. But along the way, there are times where we might come into contact with negative things that try to present themselves as positive things. And it can get very messy and scary at times, depending on the person. And we just want to protect and educate those so those bad things don't happen.
Yeah. And, it's developed by our perspective, right? So it's one thing, like, I'd like to move in, that's the importance of this, honestly, is understanding that we all experience everything differently because of our perspective. But there are certain things that do happen. The paranormal is kind of normal in a sense because of the repetitive actions of certain types of energies and frequencies and stuff. Generally, you talk about your perspective. So what is that? That's like what you identify with. Well, I identify as a female that lives in NC, and this is my family. It's all that kind of stuff, right? How do you identify? Your life experiences also rule your perspective, your values, your beliefs, also your traumas can do that too. So when that perspective is, who's to say a perspective is skewed, right? But when that perspective has a lot of lower energy stuff kind of going on, you can actually end up getting paranormal situations or hauntings, even if you're not or consider yourself like, my identity, I'm a psychic medium, I guess you could say. Even if you don't identify that way, the lower vibration is opens you up just like a higher vibration to communication. But one thing that I have found in this work is that, people that really don't understand at this current moment in time, not to say they never will, but don't understand how the vibratory scale works and like, why is this happening to me? That's kind of like the job that we do. We have to try to figure out, why is this happening to this person? And once we break it down through their perspective, it allows us to discern what's happening. But we have to step outside of our own perspective, right? To be able to do that. So how would that translate over to you guys? Sometimes we have to erase, our, not necessarily our identity, right? But our values and beliefs rather of regarding spirituality. Sometimes things happen that you can't explain. And if you're watching this video, it could more than likely mean, unless you're just doing your research, that you've had some paranormal experiences or interactions with spirit you're trying to discern. There's a whole, light and dark balance to vibration. There's a whole, was it low and high vibration, right? There's the whole spectrum there. We really are in this video talking about the paranormal, but in the lower vibration. But to realize, one thing we realize too, though, is that you have that kind of middle vibration, right? Where things are neither good or bad, or the duality of things. And that's where discernment can get kind of difficult. So, Emily, what have you experienced vibrationally, since we're talking about vibration? When you experience negative or positive vibrations, can you give me an example of the difference?
Yeah, so like I can, and people who watch this channel and my personal channel know, like, when I encounter negative vibrational things, it makes my body feel ill. Like I'll get my headaches, stomach issues. It usually plays on my health. And sometimes if I'm not paying attention, it can affect my mood. And I notice, like, for positive things, I'm just in a happier mood. I don't have health issues. I feel very energized, and I don't have like negative thoughts whatsoever. It's more like positive. Oh, I can do this, this, and this. And like the whole creativity thing sparks. I'm like in a manic phase. I kind of am in one right now. Um, but I mean, a lot of the stuff that I experienced is based off of the feelings I get within my body because of my dominant, like, clair-abilities. Um,
Right.
yeah. And while I am clairvoyant, I would say, because that's like my second, like, strongest, I would say if it's something really, really, really bad, it'll give me like attacks and nightmares and sleep paralysis and all that fun stuff.
Right. And this is coming from, generally, for me speaking, like, yeah, it's very much similar. One thing, the easiest way for me to explain this is, if you witness something paranormal, that is high vibrational, yeah, you might be a little startled, right? But you don't get these feelings, right? These feelings of dread. Some people get smells, right? Of certain things too. I get like the smell of roses, for example, or the smell of flowers. And you just don't have that like gut feeling really. And that is clairsentience. And then a lot of times that's the way a lot of people really do operate, is you'll get those feelings from what you've seen first. If it's high vibrational, it's not taking any of your time, it's not taking any of your energy. If it's low vibrational, right, and working in on what we would consider, I guess, the paranormal side of things, That's when you get into things like Emily stating, like you're going to feel an energy drain. You're going to have a sense of dread. You might have nasty smells. You might have nasty images. If you've seen it, a lot of people, get feelings, but then some people see things with their eyes, and visually you can tell kind of where that entity or being lies based on what it looks like if you see it. Sometimes you only see a mist or a dark shadow. One thing that I've learned, like about dark shadows and stuff, once you're able to kind of push past that, that comes with practice. That comes with a whole other set of, I guess you could say, discernment skills that just happen naturally as you develop your I guess you say clair senses, your extrasensory perceptions, is they can sometimes be neutral, but they also can sometimes be very low vibrational.
Hmm. I want to add too, like, some things that are really negative can appear as something that's positive, and that's where it's kind of like you got to pay attention to the rest of your senses, because you can get duped or tricked. But like I had an experience where I was talking to somebody and they were talking about like their spirit guide or whatever. And at first, I'll see the quick glimpse of what the entity is presenting itself to be, but I'm able to go deep down and peel it back like an onion to see what its true like self is. And it's kind of like that compilation of its frequency and its intentions and stuff to see what it really looks like. And if that person believes like it's benevolent or whatever, it's like no matter what you say, but it also depends too on where that person falls on that frequency scale, because if they're more lower, they might not have any issues with lower entities because it's not as opposing with their energy than something that might be higher in frequency.
Right. Energy signatures, basically, everybody has them. So you're born, and this is something that Spirit was kind of talking to me about astrology, for example, because, I do, well, some of y'all may know I do astrology, right? And I read charts and stuff like that. Everybody's kind of born into this life with something that's predestined. And this gets into like people that are naturally falling. Okay, so we're going to insert a little scale that I pulled off of Google. I guess we should insert that right here so you guys can get a visual of what I'm referring to. But I truly believe that we're all born with the capability and range of a certain vibration. So some people, are born with a very light path, and some people are born with a more darker path or darker things to have to go through in life. Does that mean we can't transcend out of that? That's the whole point, in my opinion, of living and rising above that baseline vibration. And that baseline vibration, like our existence in itself, everybody falls at a different space on this. It's really kind of hard to explain, so I hope this is making sense. But we vibe in between those things, and some people have more of a tolerance energetically, like Emily was saying, to darker stuff. Um, and it's interesting. It makes me think, Emily, like with the type of work that we do outside of our physical existence. Here's a reading rainbow thing. Outside of our physical existence, our spirit is able to actually go up and down this vibratory scale in a way too, because you're talking about the 3D versus the spiritual and how that works in together. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So the predestined vibration, because you have a lot of people that not everybody works with just light energy. Some people choose to work with darker energies, right? But these, I think it's really important, and Spirit's bringing this up, it's really important to understand, like, working with darker malevolent energies doesn't always translate the same as having a paranormal experience. It's
Hmm.
different things to different people. So, like for me, I personally don't work with any deities or anything like that. I guess, if anything, when I do my clearings, I choose to use in Jesus's name because it's very powerful. It works. I guess you could say I work with that spirit or deity or whatever you refer to that as. But personally, I do not. I work with just universal energy and follow universal laws, and it seems to work very well for me. One thing that is important is to know, like, when working with light beings or beings of light or lighter vibration or higher vibration, however you identify with that, one thing that I have found, there is never like a complete give take. There is never an arrangement, right? And I found that a lot of people that work with middle, kind of neutral, where you would say, to lower vibrational beings or entities, there's always generally some type of give take, whether that's energy, offerings, and stuff of the such. And it goes back to correlate between how we perceive light and dark versus when we experience something supernatural, preternatural, paranormal, however you want to say it. When we experience these things, darker, lower vibe energies and entities generally take, whether it's in a very small amount of just inducing fear versus, what people can consider the worst, like an actual physical possession or even someone's life, which we've heard cases of that, not particularly any of our clients, but it has been documented. So, working with higher vibrational energy, there is never a pull. Gratitude goes a long way, though. They do appreciate, kind of in a way, like a thank you. But that is another way just to correlate and discern, because you can't, again, teaching discernment is really hard. We can only teach you or translate discernment to you through our experiences because it's not observable.
Everything has its own energy signature and frequency, including specific entities. So, not just energies, but we have negative entities. And based on where people fall within that frequency scale of what they can see, what they consider to be good, negative, positive, middle, neutral, whatever you want to call it, could make it difficult to define what is considered to be a negative entity. But and it also goes based off of like religion and culture and stuff like that. But I feel like when at least we talk about negative entities, we are referring to entities that pose some kind of harm or issues on another being. So whether that is taking energy, that is creating fear, oppression, creating illness or causing illness, that's kind of where we are with the negative entity spectrum.
And some of the things that, we've experienced, other people experience. So, commonly, like one of the darker entities that I have seen, and this could be my perception in the way that I discern the entity, right? But I had a case that I am allowed to talk about that I will be sharing at some point. They gave me permission to, was with Angela the doll that was sent to Dead Serious Investigations. And every time I see like a young girl, sometimes she's little, sometimes she's more maybe teenager, maybe early 20s, just depends. It changes, but they always look the same. They always have all the hair in front of their face. They have black hair, the dress, the whole nine, right? And I see that type of entity through different types of hauntings. So, I have to use my discernment to be able to tell what this entity wants, right? Because a lot of times it's all about wanting something. That's the only reason that negative energy or entities are there for people that are experiencing paranormal activity. And it generally can be either from the person or just for itself, because they exist with those, lower, really big egos. They actually have egos on the other side too. But the point is, my client actually saw it too. But it's not the first time that I've dealt or seen an entity presenting itself that way. It falls at a certain frequency and vibration of fear. And sometimes I think, these energies are able to kind of construct together with common fears and people's thoughts and what, and it has a lot to do with like the cycle of energy shedding too, which is something that I really want to kind of like dive in and make a thesis about here at some point in my life when I can. But yeah, that's like just one example of something that I've seen. And guys, I don't know, there's some episodes that I've talked about this in, but this entity was like scratching my client. I've talked about it several times, but scratching my client, they were being pushed down the steps, they were having nightmares, they were having sleep paralysis, a lot of things they never really asked for or didn't have any involvement with, searching for the paranormal, I guess you could say. So, there's all different types of people from all different types of walks of life that would require discernment to be able to understand exactly what they're going through. And that's kind of the purpose that we have here of this, I guess you could say, this podcast. So, Emily, do you have any examples of like spirits that you have found like repeat patterns for that kind of help you discern what's what?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, I have one. Actually, I've had a few clients that started more on the darker end of the spectrum that worshipped or worked with, and this is going to piss a lot of people off, but again, it's based off of perception, the being Lilith, who started off, working with her, and then all of a sudden, all these bad things would start happening. And I mean, I had a client that went through a possession because she started working with her. She had a whole entire legion of demons, whatever you want to call it. I just call them the lowest of the low frequency that humanity can perceive on the scale of things. But every client I've had that has worked with the entity referred to as Lilith, it's bad. It's bad on their end of oppression that they face.
Yeah. And I've had people contact me that have worked with lower vibrational energies from an, I guess, a perspective like archetypical perspective or archetype perspective, and started like following what they've read in books and stuff like that, and have the same thing happen, and begin to realize that it's slowly but surely, it happens over time, but slowly but surely they start losing pieces of themselves. They start having to make arrangements and deals, and some people get to the point where they these energies or entities are able to telepathically communicate or get in their head, and then they're having conversations with them, and these are normal people.
Hmm.
These are very normal people, and it is similar to having spirit guides, but the difference is there is no negative talk. There is no like there's nothing really negative that comes from connecting to your spirit guides that are set. I do not chase spirit guides. I do not try to obtain spirit guides. I just let what naturally comes through come through. But I also ask for my initial guides to set up like a bar, like
Hmm.
parameters around what type of information comes through. I don't always when I tap in, but I try to make it like, because it's literally like a thought construct, like a thought form, right? But a
Hmm.
construct that we set up within ourselves that allow us to communicate. And this can be as simple as just inner self dialogue. It doesn't have to be, people want to make it about like, I want to know who my spirit guides are, I want to know what they do, I want to know what they look like. That's fine, you can have all that, but you can also just do it based off energy and how you feel, because everybody has different levels of extrasensory perceptions when it's referred to like the clairs.
So, like, I noticed something similar over time of what you're talking about. Like, I was so obsessed with who my spirit guides were. What do they do? Like, what is their history? And I noticed that when you focus solely on those kinds of, like, I don't know what you want to call them, but it's like you get so focused on that expectation or idea of something that you can accidentally create something different from what you're actually dealing with, and that can come and become a problem in of itself, and it's like you don't want that to happen. And so I don't know if you noticed through my personal videos, but I started laying off of the idea of exactly who my spirit guides are. Like, it's I don't know. In the beginning, it's good to know who you're dealing with, but you have to watch that level of obsession. And it's when you get that obsessive over the idea of something, that's kind of low in vibration in of itself. You don't want that type of energy. And things can take advantage of that obsession. So if you're really obsessed over like who your spirit guides are, you can have negative things come in based off of that obsessive idea or compulsion, and then kind of like trick you into thinking, oh, they're your spirit guides, but they're not. And it's kind of like you just gotta watch.
Yeah. And that again, it takes time because I made a little listy here that I was supposed to share, but I forgot. My little listy is, this is a very analytical way. Okay. It's again, it's kind of difficult to take analytical and put it into emotional or non observable, but the ways to harness the power basically of spiritual discernment in any way, whether positive or negative, is first you have to step outside of your own perceptions and your own kind of like thought constructs here to accept the fact that there is something spiritual. There is a spiritual world that exists among the whole world here. Okay. And our perception of where we exist. There's multiple layers, there's multiple dimensions, and you have to literally like loosen your grip to the 3D, your ego, to be able to tap into that. Then you have to tap into your spiritual abilities. This is kind of how it unfolds. And again, our discernment, we always have a level of discernment, but that level of discernment changes. There's different levels that are needed for different spiritual practices and routines. And however deep you want to get into this is how deep your discernment can be, unless you just possess that 3D gut knowing discernment, which some people are truly blessed with. Some people definitely are not. And it's not necessarily a negative thing. It's just not a part of your path. It's something that people have to work a little harder for. You got to tap into those spiritual gifts, claircognizant, your ESP. That's claircognizant, clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairgustance. Is it clairflatulence?
Flatulence something.
I call it, it's clear smelling, clairgustance taste, clear smelling, right? I joke around and I've called it clairflatulence so long I forget how to pronounce it. Claircognizance, clear knowing. We've taught this a lot before, so bear with us unless you're new. Let's see, clairvoyancy, seeing, clairsentience is feeling, right, in the body, and empath is feeling emotions. Discernment is a lot related to being empathic, and empathic, in my opinion, is a gateway to your clairsenses too. A lot of people will be empathic before they ever step into realizing that they're having clairsenses. Some people just have them all the time and don't even realize it. It's not really something to, you have to kind of just learn how to tap into it. It's already there. It already exists. And that's important to say. Next, you do have to gain knowledge, right? In general, knowledge, but you also have to gain an understanding of what you're dealing with, and that takes time. Like this, it really does take time, and it looks different. Everybody's time scale, just like everybody's vibrational scale, is different. So again, we all have a certain level of discernment, but it's about how much discernment you have. Once you obtain the practice and the experience, you have to trust that connection.
Mhm.
And the main thing is trusting that connection. And that happens over time, right? And then you have to understand how you feel. How is your new, if you're on the side of what's considered esoteric, you have to test what you're seeing. You have to test these spirits. Like you have to, or it can end up not so well. And I say this not as fear mongering, from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that have either messaged us, contacted us, had some type of session with us, or we have worked with them over a period of months or years based on all kinds of things. And it's this vast range of things.
I'd want to add too, like with the whole learning thing, at least from my experience of how I learn the discernment too, it's like you have to have your base knowledge of how things are in a way, but also like I always advocate to write shit down. Write it down so you can go back and analyze. And it's like, for example, if you want to do it this way, pick an entity or whatever, or something you might be working with, and then do research based on that. Look at the case files of everybody that's come in contact with it, see what it did to other people or how it interacted with other people. If you can even find some of that stuff, you can find. But it's like if you don't have, or you're at the very beginning of your abilities and you're still trying to navigate it and you don't know how or what things are, and I would always do the whole research bit and look up things and look how it interacted with people to get
Right.
it, and just see if you can pick out certain patterns of its behavior, and if it did anything good, anything bad, anything in the middle, to get a general understanding. And of course, there's going to be things that aren't documented because it is outside of the realm of, I would say, general understanding from those that may not have abilities, or even those with abilities they might not have experienced.
Yeah, or those that really have accessed their abilities. And it's important to note that sometimes, like in the field doing paranormal investigation, is a lot of ways that people will interact with different types of spirits. Most people might have a spiritual experience every now and again, but if it's not a big part of your life, a lot of people don't just sit here and have ghosts walking through your house all the time, or something crazy like a cryptid or a thought form or a demon. But we actually, some people have to go looking for this and be mindful that some of these middle-y type neutral to top low vibrational entities, they don't always mean to hurt you. They're just stuck in a space. This is a vast space of existence that is going to be impossible to cover in one video or probably even one series. To be honest, we've tried and we did, but it was, you can only go so deep, really. But it literally comes from experience based learning to gather that deeper discernment connection. And it also comes with just knowing, again, different levels, just knowing. Sometimes everybody has access to their thoughts, right? And the way that, I guess, as a person that experiences all four of the clairs, least amount clairaudient, unless you consider that like hearing the voices, right? And that sounds crazy, like I need to be locked up, but it's been a big part of my life in discerning things. These voices sometimes, like you're not sure kind of where it comes from. I found that my spirit guides do use my voice, I guess you could say, but I don't actually hear them. They're thoughts and they're quieter. That's why I call them divine whispers for myself. And other people have said to experience it that way as well. There's a link to like clairaudience and hearing these, thoughts, or just knowing and seeing the psychic symbols. Psychic symbols is really important. I don't have a complete set list of psychic symbols like a lot of people. I've noticed some mediums have, like, what is that girl? Oh man, I can't remember her name, but she says pineapple represents Florida, right?
Yeah.
I don't have those types of symbols. Sometimes I do, but if somebody was trying to tell me Florida, I would go back to an experience that I had, or like there would be a flash of something familiar because I've been to Florida, for
Mhm.
example. It comes in different ways, and like taking all these psychic symbols and piecing them together, right? For somebody that is using that, it can be on a small or big level. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a psychic medium to do this. You can do this with just your own thoughts. Take pieces, write it down. I get people to auto write. They are so surprised at what comes out. Sometimes too, you can actually, gain your discernment that way too. Practicing. Emily's talking about writing down the different information about entities. It's a great idea, but find places to practice. Like I don't know, I can't remember the name of it right now, but certain Facebook groups, people put pictures of themselves, and you can write unapproved reader on some of them and just give them what you get.
Mhm.
And
I,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, before I even started doing this work publicly, I practiced and practiced for like 2 or 3 years before I even started charging because I wanted to be damn sure that I was confident in what I was doing and at least accurate too.
Yeah, I think I started offering services in April of 2023, and now it's 2024, and I was doing it a lot longer behind the scenes, before I ever did any of this work. Um, it's a learning journey, right? And a lot of people may just be normal people, and I don't want to classify as a normal person here, but normal people as in like not having paranormal or psychic experiences every day. You still have the ability to discern. It is literally linked to your emotions and the way you feel. We all have extrasensory perception, just depends on what level you want to tap into it. And you don't have to be a master psychic to do this. It is literally about trusting yourself. But sometimes, if there's a lot of negative, lower vibrational emotions that are kind of junking up our perception, right? Then we can start to be in a place of fear. We can start to live in a place of fear, which can kind of shift our perspective when we are having unexplainable supernatural experiences.
And it can make them worse too, but that's why we try to educate because with knowledge it kind of erases that fear because a lot of the fear is based off of the unknown of, oh my god, what is that? I don't know what that is. And then it makes your brain spiral into the worst possibilities that one could imagine the thing doing or going to do or whatever.
Right. Exactly. And there is a correlation. I had this pulled up yesterday, and it was something that Spirit kind of wanted me to look into, but I don't know if I actually have it still pulled up. But basically, it's how those thought constructs that exist that we can use, they exist in our everyday life patterns, right? But we have negative thought constructs. And that's when we have like that negative self talk, that's where either it's learned behavior or traumatic experiences, right? That can shift our discernment. So to really, we always have discernment, especially in serious situations. Many people have that, like fight or flight kicks in. Think about it. You'll get discernment pretty fast. But it is
Mhm.
it is different. It's a different feeling, and it comes with practice. But negative self-talk and thoughts, and like telling, always expecting the worst out of things, can put you on that vibratory scale, and all those feelings and emotions like sadness and fear and anger and all that lowers that frequency, and it can junk up the way that you perceive things.
I had someone tell me that it's because I've had all these negative experiences that it messed up my perception, and so I just am fear mongering because I'm afraid.
Oh, really?
Hmm.
Well, I'll say this. When you have so many people come to you with the same experience, but from different walks of life, different experiences, you don't always have to have negative experiences to perceive negative things. Sometimes it's like wrong place, wrong time. Everything happens for a reason. But when you have a proven track record of things happening in written form, it's not quite scientific, but it's as scientific as you can get. Certain entities, certain beings, they all act the same way, whether they have the same personality or not. They all have habits. They all have different forms and functions and what they do,
Hmm.
different levels.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, people would say that we're fear mongering based off of the information we're giving because of, like, we're blinded by the experiences we've had, if that makes sense. Which I can
Yeah.
understand that that can affect how we perceive things. But if it's like our job and we're doing this to help people, each case and client, we reset back to zero. We don't let that stuff get in the way.
I'm healed from that kind of stuff,
Same.
almost to the point of being desensitized from that. I don't operate in fear. If I operated in fear, then I couldn't do this work,
Mm-hmm.
period. Because I'd be too fearful to help people, because I would still be affected by the 15-year haunting I had um, through the family I'm married in. I was just sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
It targeted me because I was sensitive, and I didn't really know what any of that meant. I was a kid, I was a teenager. This stuff, when I was in my teens, this kind of stuff really wasn't talked about that much, nor was it accepted.
Mm-hmm.
um People were growing up in a different type of, there's a different generation now. I'm, working on 40 here almost. This, and a lot of people, a lot of the clients that I have are in their 30s and, older. A lot of clients that I have are a little bit older than me. I rarely have a client that is younger than 30. For me, that's just me.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that say? Is what correlation? Because looking at it from a perspective of like, is that just who I'm meant to work with? I'm possibly pretty sure. Or is that where people are starting to like shift and change perspectives in their life and kind of start to realize that they have gifts too? There's just so many different things. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much.
Yeah. I would say now too, like my client base is very similar to yours. I'm getting a lot of older people, and a lot of them are older than me. And I'm in my 30s. I'm early 30s.
Yeah. And I wonder if that has something to do with, it could be constructs of things that they experience, but people, what they weren't taught about this kind of stuff. There is really no rules or guidelines. There's people that have written books on their experiences and stuff, but there's nothing, mainstream here that really sets it up. Unfortunately, our mainstream is full of, paranormal activity from people that are not sensitive, that are sensitive and have no freaking idea what they're talking about. No offense,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes it very difficult when the masses are still stuck on like, oh my god, what is it? you
Yeah.
know it just threw something at me, I can't see it. And it's like there are so many people out here now that can. The
Mm-hmm.
veil is thinning no matter what, and the generation of people that are being born now and that are coming up now, they are so much more in tune with themselves, right? But there's so much information out there that could be considered misinformation. I don't even think it would be misinformation. There's so much information in the spiritual world because everybody's different. Everybody perceives things differently, but it doesn't work for everybody. So what we do is not going to work for everybody, and that's okay. What somebody else does is not going to work for everybody. That vibrational scale, if you're meant to work with these lower energies in your life, then that's what's going to happen, and you're not going to have any problems. I have yet to see that, though.
Mm-hmm.
Out of anything and everything that I've done case wise, I have yet to see anybody work with darker energies unless they really have a understanding. There are people I know of that say that it works out really well for them, and but at what cost is the question that I ask. And I'm talking about really dark stuff. I'm not talking about the stuff that's in between. Are there gray spirits that can help? Yes, it's up to the individual to choose to work on that. Do they take from them things? Maybe there's an arrangement or an agreement and there won't be anything. But in terms of like really darker, you know, things, people, what they consider to be different levels of demons and princes and all that kind of stuff, it at the end of the day, really, when you think about it, it's all a thought construct. These are the things that I have juggled throughout life. Could we be the creators of all this?
Mm-hmm.
Could humans be the creators of all of this because of our ability to create? Because we create our own reality, right? But, and we're an individual with free will, and free will is honored by each individual. That just doesn't stop here at Earth. That's on the other side. Like, you have to step outside of yourself and see it from a different perspective. And that's part of discernment too. You have to, or your discernment will be off. Other things They have their own energy frequency and vibration on the scale, and yours can be here and theirs can be here. When that comes together, it's going to be uncomfortable for the person that's involved. It's free will and intention with conscious, I guess you could say, beings or entities, because some energies are residual and not conscious, and they can make us feel certain ways, right? But they don't have a conscience. They don't have sentience. There's all different types of things, and you have to be able to discern the difference between a sentient being and a non-sentient energy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot, but
Yeah.
honestly, discernment is discernment is discernment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also want to throw in there too. It's like, and I've learned this through my Reiki guy. Um, but it's like when somebody says something and it triggers an emotional response within you, that then tells you that there is some healing that has to be done. And I'm talking about like, I don't want to say like stupid stuff or things that don't quite matter, because if you're confident in who you are and the things you've done, what people say shouldn't matter and it shouldn't really get to you, if that makes sense. So it's like, for example, like being told that I'm a fear mongerer. At first, I was like frustrated, and I'm like, well, why am I frustrated and why am I feeling this anger? And I realized that it's because there was some traumas that I had left to heal. They're healed now, but it's like once they were healed, it kind of like rolled over my shoulder, because I just remembered like, oh, well, I know who I am. I do what I do for this, and this reason. And I feel like when it comes to negative entities and things, when you throw out there like, oh, well, I've had this negative experience, and a lot of people that I know have had this negative experience, and you're talking to somebody that works with that said entity, and they get mad and they start coming at you, and that tells me that there's something going on there that needs worked on, and maybe there's something going on that they might not realize that's going on based off of some of the experiences that they have gone through, and might not realize the cause of those experiences.
Yeah, and speaking of Reiki, Reiki's been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And, there's different, it's very common, it's a common practice to raise the vibration. When you do Reiki sessions or, dealing with your chakras, you're not trying to lower that vibration. You're trying to raise it. So why for thousands and thousands of years would we need to raise that vibration if there wasn't another side to be lowered from for ourselves? But see, certain Reiki, everybody does their Reiki kind of similar, but everybody has different experiences in terms of the Reiki master that's performing it. So they can experience different negative energies in different ways through their clair perceptions and the initiations that they went through, right? And they experience pulling off like negative energies and even entities sometimes that are attached to people. So if these things didn't exist, why for thousands upon thousands of years has it been documented and made into a literal like spiritual art form to raise the vibration of an individual?
Exactly.
Like, people can say that it is a lesson working with, what we would consider lower vibrational energies, or it's really, I don't even want to say we, like, it's known certain energies are not all peachy to work with, right? Which is something, again, I chose not to do because I don't feel like it's needed. Like, I don't need a connection with the particular deity. I don't need any of that, like other people have done and got themselves in trouble with, to be able to do what I do to help people. So I'm not really the one to go into that because I don't experience my abilities or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really say from that side, but I can say that, higher vibrational. I've never heard anybody say they had a bad experience with like Shiva, but it is, what is it? The one of the deities of destruction too. Destruction's transformation. Transformation, yeah, we have to ride that wave. My principle that I teach, we have to ride the wave. When we hit the bottom of that wave, shit can get tough, right?
Mhm.
And that can bring us our vibration down. That can attract things that need to feed. Again, there's always a give take with lower vibrational beings, not starting at the mark of the neutral. It's just a tiny bit, and the further you go down, the more they take. And spirit basically said, because they're the furthest away from the light. What
Mhm.
is the light? The light is creation. It is regenerating. It is renewal. It is endless love. They do not exist in endless love. And they do not, to get to that point, it's not God and the devil, I guess you could say. That's the way that we have to describe it, right? It's not just the God against the devil, it's
Mhm.
positive versus negative.
And we only have that because we're living in a dualistic kind of realm or universe, whatever you want to call it, because I feel like a lot of that's how humanity can like perceive things. It's
Yeah,
based, yeah.
it's the form of existence.
And
It's
like
the principle.
the thing with the deities you were talking about, it's like in my beginning, like starting out, and this again is my own experience. I was heavy on like Shiva and like certain deities, but now as I'm growing, I don't rely on a specific deity, it's just spirit.
Yeah, I rely on creator energy,
Yep.
universal high vibrational energy to pull in, you know, um, information. Is there times that it helps to have a higher vibrational being that does exist to come in? Yes. But
Hmm.
as far as like working in that energy, I do not have those experiences. So I
Yeah.
always think it's interesting to hear people's experiences, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just my personal choice. And I
Hmm.
don't have problems with it. Like, it comes along like with the golden rule. When you're looking at it from a 3D perspective, there's the golden rule of treat others the way you want to be treated, right? Or just, having moral standings is kind of the same thing, positive, negative. It goes through all out life. And understanding and discerning the difference between positive and negative energy is already kind of installed inside of us. Yes, we all have a certain level of discernment, but as you divulge into the spiritual realm, it is important to continue to work on that discernment, because you can get to a point where you get yourself in a pickle and then you start to have issues. Does this happen to everybody? No, it doesn't. But being able to discern what you're dealing with can keep you safe. It can protect not only yourself, but your energy. You can protect your body better than you can protect your energy if you don't know, unless you don't know what's going on. Like, it's easy. It's easy to do. It can be done with words and rituals and stuff like that. Again, all these thought constructs we create. But one thing that I do know that is very real is there are energies outside of our own experiences that exist. So no matter what we've experienced, these energy entity beings still exist, whether we experience them or not. You have skeptics, you have people that say this is bull crap. There are people that will sit here and say that we made all this up. I don't have time to make all this up. I don't have time to come on here and feed
Hmm.
people bullshit. Like, I do this because I'm meant to do this. I do not make money doing this.
Hmm.
Hardly at all. So it's not something that's for profit. Hopefully one day that will change, because this is my full-time job, and that's just me being honest. Like, I'm very transparent. I want to help people. I've been doing this for years, but one thing that does not change is what exists outside of the self that has free will. And we encounter that in human form, animal form, 3D form, or we encounter that in a spiritual form, and everybody's going to perceive that differently. But I don't know a single soul that hasn't ever had a paranormal experience before end up having something crazy happen. And it does not install fear, because it's a part of human nature. And our job is to take that fear and figure out why it happened. Sometimes it's people that are causing it themselves. Sometimes it's their own thought constructs, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's the actual sentient lower vibrational energy that is interjecting themselves into this person's life that, from my experience, hides within the layers of trauma or where they're most vulnerable. Where you're vulnerable, they get into the cracks. The vulnerability is the cracks. We've taught this time and time again. I will take a moment to say, if you're interested in learning more, go back to season 1. We talk about all this. It's very hard for us to take all that information, try to compile it down into less than an hour. 60 hours of content, season 1. There's no video. It's all audio. Some of the audio still probably needs to be fixed. We were still learning, but some of it's still pretty good. I mean, listening wise, just to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's wild to me to hear that people would say that we're fear mongering, considering all that I've been through, all the people that have contacted me, and hundreds of people on my end. I don't know. I mean,
It's about the same. It's about the same.
On my end that have had experiences, and they get figured out and they get help. And sometimes that help can take a long time because of their healing.
Mm-hmm.
It's our actions that create vibrations, that settle within our energy signature, that attract things, or we go places where things exist, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really, I mean, I'm sure you have some stuff you want to add, but really that's all I have, because we kind of got into more stuff than discernment. But I think it's important to say discernment, something we're all born with. Little recap, we all have it. It's learning how to fine tune that through stepping out of the ego, trusting the information, learning about it. Knowledge is power. Being able to repetitively find patterns, because we're human. That's part of life. We have to find patterns that exist. And does that mean it always has the same outcome? No. But in a lot of situations, Emily can vouch, it's generally the same thing, same outcome, with just different twists and tweaks. It's like a fine old machine. And I would easily say, I wouldn't say thousands or hundreds of thousands. I'd say millions of people deal around the world with this kind of stuff. It's a part of life. It's a part of culture. It's a thought of a human construct that existed before we breathed in this body. So we have to honor that in different ways.
It's 2/3 of the human population, right? Isn't that what the
American
population?
Statistic.
Yeah.
Yep, 2/3 of the American population says they experience something they can't explain, and half of American population believes in the paranormal or the supernatural or the spiritual world, whether that's in the form of Christianity or some, you know, on the extremes here, Christianity or Satanism. Some Satanists don't believe in any of it, right? But some do fully practice with spirits and stuff, and that's their business. But, you know, we've just, and from our perspective and from the many people that have reached out to us, we have to use that discernment based on our perception. So yeah. All right, guys. Well, I guess that wraps it up. I hope you enjoyed our hour of rambling about discernment and spirits and all kinds of goody things. But yeah, guys, until next time, peace out.
Peace out, Girl Scout, Boy Scout, everyone else Scout.
Hey, if you have a haunted story you want to share, you can email us at lightsatmidnightpodcast@gmail.com. Get in touch with us there. We'd love to hear from you. We really appreciate y'all hanging around and checking it out. And yeah, thank you so much. We are super excited to bring you some super awesome content. We really appreciate you guys checking us out.
Thank you to all that took the time to listen to this week's episode. Your support means the world to us. And remember, all of us have the ability to shine brightly and shed positivity, even in the darkest of places. Stay safe, stay well, and light it up!